In times of great uncertainty, some things become more clear. The things we take for granted, the people we depend on daily. Here at 11 Alive, we'd like to say thank you. First responders, medical staff, sanitation workers, truck drivers, postal workers, and every brave Georgian doing their part to make a difference. We see you, we hear you, and we appreciate all that you do.
Let's start with a viral message going around. Quote, vast majority of people who died had ibuprofen Advil in their system. This message is fake.
We just bought 20 dust masks for $97.
Are you doing this to help people, or are you doing this to make money, or both?
Both. Take this email sent to the Verify team. Is it safe to have your house cleaned by outside workers? The best practice is to limit guests to emergencies only.
We know things are changing every day, but we're here with you. Continuous COVID-19 coverage during prime time. We're committed to giving you facts, not fear. On 11 Alive News Prime Time, weeknights from 8 to 11 on WATF.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Today at noon on 11 Alive.
We are seeing that lack of smell or altered taste can be a symptom.
We answer your coronavirus-related medical questions. Because 11 Alive is where Atlanta speaks.
Televised newscasts not enough for you? Get even more at 11 Alive's YouTube channel, where you'll find uncut interviews, extended body cam footage, live streams of Atlanta's biggest trials, and more. Subscribe to 11 Alive today.
Let's start with a viral message going around. Quote, vast majority of people who died had ibuprofen Advil in their system. This message is fake.
We just bought 20 dust masks for $97.
Are you doing this to help people, or are you doing this to make money, or both?
Both. Take this email sent to the Verify team. Is it safe to have your house cleaned by outside workers? The best practice is to limit guests to emergencies only.
We know things are changing every day, but we're here with you. Continuous COVID-19 coverage during prime time. We're committed to giving you facts, not fear. On 11 Alive News Prime Time, weeknights from 8 to 11 on WATF.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Today at noon on 11 Alive.
We are seeing that lack of smell or altered taste can be a symptom.
We answer your coronavirus-related medical questions. Because 11 Alive is where Atlanta speaks.
Televised newscasts not enough for you? Get even more at 11 Alive's YouTube channel, where you'll find uncut interviews, extended body cam footage, live streams of Atlanta's biggest trials, and more. Subscribe to 11 Alive today.
In times of great uncertainty, some things become more clear. The things we take for granted, the people we depend on daily. Here at 11 Alive, we'd like to say thank you. First responders, medical staff, sanitation workers, truck drivers, postal workers, and every brave Georgian doing their part to make a difference. We see you, we hear you, and we appreciate all that you do.
Let's start with a viral message going around. Quote, vast majority of people who died had ibuprofen Advil in their system. This message is fake.
We just bought 20 dust masks for $97.
Are you doing this to help people or are you doing this to make money or both?
Both. Take this email sent to the Verify team. Is it safe to have your house cleaned by outside workers? The best practice is to limit guests to emergencies only.
We know things are changing every day, but we're here with you. Continuous COVID-19 coverage during prime time. We're committed to giving you facts, not fear. On 11 Alive News Primetime, weeknights from 8 to 11 on WATF.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Today at noon on 11 Alive.
We are seeing that lack of smell or altered taste can be a symptom.
We answer your coronavirus-related medical questions. Because 11 Alive is where Atlanta speaks.
Televised newscasts not enough for you? Get even more at 11 Alive's YouTube channel, where you'll find uncut interviews, extended body cam footage, live streams of Atlanta's biggest trials, and more. Subscribe to 11 Alive today.
In times of great uncertainty, some things become more clear. The things we take for granted, the people we depend on daily. Here at 11 Alive, we'd like to say thank you. First responders, medical staff, sanitation workers, truck drivers, postal workers, and every brave Georgian doing their part to make a difference. We see you, we hear you, and we appreciate all that you do.
Let's start with a viral message going around. Quote, vast majority of people who died had ibuprofen Advil in their system. This message is fake.
We just bought 20 dust masks for $97.
Are you doing this to help people or are you doing this to make money or both?
Both. Take this email sent to the Verify team. Is it safe to have your house cleaned by outside workers? The best practice is to limit guests to emergencies only.
We know things are changing every day, but we're here with you. Continuous COVID-19 coverage during prime time. We're committed to giving you facts, not fear. On 11 Alive News Primetime, weeknights from 8 to 11 on WATF.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Today at noon on 11 Alive.
We are seeing that lack of smell or altered taste can be a symptom.
We answer your coronavirus-related medical questions. Because 11 Alive is where Atlanta speaks.
Televised newscasts not enough for you? Get even more at 11 Alive's YouTube channel, where you'll find uncut interviews, extended body cam footage, live streams of Atlanta's biggest trials, and more. Subscribe to 11 Alive today.
Let's start with a viral message going around. Quote, vast majority of people who died had ibuprofen Advil in their system. This message is fake.
We just bought 20 dust masks for $97.
Are you doing this to help people or are you doing this to make money or both?
Both. Take this email sent to the Verify team. Is it safe to have your house cleaned by outside workers? The best practice is to limit guests to emergencies only.
We know things are changing every day, but we're here with you. Continuous COVID-19 coverage during prime time. We're committed to giving you facts, not fear. On 11 Alive News Primetime, weeknights from 8 to 11 on WATF.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Today at noon on 11 Alive.
We are seeing that lack of smell or altered taste can be a symptom.
We answer your coronavirus-related medical questions. Because 11 Alive is where Atlanta speaks.
Televised newscasts not enough for you? Get even more at 11 Alive's YouTube channel, where you'll find uncut interviews, extended body cam footage, live streams of Atlanta's biggest trials, and more. Subscribe to 11 Alive today.
In times of great uncertainty, some things become more clear. The things we take for granted, the people we depend on daily. Here at 11 Alive, we'd like to say thank you. First responders, medical staff, sanitation workers, truck drivers, postal workers, and every brave Georgian doing their part to make a difference. We see you, we hear you, and we appreciate all that you do.
Let's start with a viral message going around. Quote, vast majority of people who died had ibuprofen Advil in their system. This message is fake.
We just bought 20 dust masks for $97.
Are you doing this to help people or are you doing this to make money or both?
Both. Take this email sent to the Verify team. Is it safe to have your house cleaned by outside workers? The best practice is to limit guests to emergencies only.
We know things are changing every day, but we're here with you. Continuous COVID-19 coverage during prime time. We're committed to giving you facts, not fear. On 11 Alive News Primetime, weeknights from 8 to 11 on WATF.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Today at noon on 11 Alive.
We are seeing that lack of smell or altered taste can be a symptom.
We answer your coronavirus-related medical questions. Because 11 Alive is where Atlanta speaks.
Televised newscasts not enough for you? Get even more at 11 Alive's YouTube channel, where you'll find uncut interviews, extended body cam footage, live streams of Atlanta's biggest trials, and more. Subscribe to 11 Alive today.
In times of great uncertainty, some things become more clear. The things we take for granted, the people we depend on daily. Here at 11 Alive, we'd like to say thank you. First responders, medical staff, sanitation workers, truck drivers, postal workers, and every brave Georgian doing their part to make a difference. We see you, we hear you, and we appreciate all that you do.
Let's start with a viral message going around. Quote, vast majority of people who died had ibuprofen Advil in their system. This message is fake.
We just bought 20 dust masks for $97.
Are you doing this to help people or are you doing this to make money or both?
Both. Take this email sent to the Verify team. Is it safe to have your house cleaned by outside workers? The best practice is to limit guests to emergencies only.
We know things are changing every day, but we're here with you. Continuous COVID-19 coverage during prime time. We're committed to giving you facts, not fear. On 11 Alive News Primetime, weeknights from 8 to 11 on WATF.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Today at noon on 11 Alive.
We are seeing that lack of smell or altered taste can be a symptom.
We answer your coronavirus-related medical questions. Because 11 Alive is where Atlanta speaks.
Televised newscasts not enough for you? Get even more at 11 Alive's YouTube channel, where you'll find uncut interviews, extended body cam footage, live streams of Atlanta's biggest trials, and more. Subscribe to 11 Alive today.
Let's start with a viral message going around. Quote, vast majority of people who died had ibuprofen Advil in their system. This message is fake.
We just bought 20 dust masks for $97.
Are you doing this to help people or are you doing this to make money or both?
Both. Take this email sent to the Verify team. Is it safe to have your house cleaned by outside workers? The best practice is to limit guests to emergencies only.
We know things are changing every day, but we're here with you. Continue
today because we are still in the midst of a pandemic. We are all in different locations. Chief Slaughter I see in his office. Chief Ryan is joining us from headquarters. And I am also joining you remotely. But as always, we continue to coordinate and speak on almost a daily basis regarding where we are with public safety. Also, I want to recognize our interim corrections chief, Reginald Mitchell, who is also joining us today and will be available to answer any questions that you all have. October is National Crime Prevention Month, and we continue to be focused on crime in Atlanta. And while we are one of the largest cities in the country, a huge metropolitan area, and have many issues and areas of concern that face us on a daily basis, you don't get to be mayor of Atlanta without being able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And you don't get to be a major city that's recognized globally as one of the top cities in the world without being able to keep your eyes on different prizes. Right now, our eye is on crime in Atlanta, and will continue to be that, because we know that when people are not safe in our city, and even when there is a perception that people aren't safe in our city, that it is not just a concern for those who call Atlanta home, but also for our visitors and our businesses as well. Just over the past few weeks, I've done a very similar briefing, a smaller briefing with the Edgewood community. Chief Ryan and I began one this morning with the Buckhead Coalition, and we thought that it might be helpful to share this with the city as a whole. We recognize that we're seeing an uptick in crime in Atlanta. And unfortunately, Atlanta is not alone, because this is a national trend. We were seeing our numbers tick a bit upward before the pandemic began. And in the midst of the pandemic, on top of the social unrest that we've seen across the country, we've seen those numbers go up even more. Overall, we were seeing a downward trend with our crime, but our violent crime numbers were continuing to go up, and we are seeing numbers that we've not seen in Atlanta as it relates to our murder rate, specifically in several years. So we recognize that this is a problem. Unfortunately, many of these murders seem to be community-based incidents, meaning that there is some type of recognition or some type of relationship or familiarity with many of these incidents. And that speaks to the larger systemic issue that we continue to face as a city and as a community on how we resolve conflict. But there are still acts of violence that are happening across our city that we recognize are a problem, and we recognize that we have to get a handle on. Part of the reason that I had confidence in appointing Interim Chief Bryant to lead our police department was because during my 8 years on city council, for several of those years, Chief Bryant was my Zone 4 commander. Zone 4 was one of the most challenged crime areas in the city. Chief Bryant had a very good working relationship with our community. He also worked very diligently to reduce those crime numbers in the city. He's a son of Atlanta, born and raised in the city, and so he knows and understands the nuances and the complexities of our communities. And so I continue to have confidence in his leadership. I want to specifically touch on a few areas before I toss it over to Chief Ryan for us to hear from him in more detail, but just a few areas. One has been street racing. We continue to see this as a problem. That's a direct result of where we are with COVID. There's been a decrease in traffic on our city streets, and people have taken advantage of that. We have been working with our city council and working to make some changes in our city ordinances, which are coming online, that will allow us to have stiffer enforcement, working with Chief Portis and the judges over at municipal court to make sure that people aren't automatically released from jail on these offenses. So that should help if we have increased citations, increased patrolling as it relates to street racing. We continue to ask the public to please notify us immediately when you see a crowd gathering and it looks like this is about to happen. It's helpful to have things on social media, but unless 911 is called, it's difficult for us to respond to it in real time. There have been questions related to the morale of our police officers and whether or not this is contributing to the uptick in crime. What's happening across the country, we've seen across the country, is that many police departments are challenged right now. That there is not just a morale issue with our officers in Atlanta, but we're seeing it because of where we are in terms of community and public safety interaction. Chief Ryan and I talk about this quite frequently on how we can continue to keep an eye on this and to improve that. Prior to my administration pushing forward with a 30% pay increase for our officers, which I thought was extremely important because we wanted to show our officers that we valued them, valued the work that they did and had, and wanted to be supportive of them to allow them to be able to take care of their families without having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. As many of you all know, we were seeing many of our officers leave our police force in very large numbers. That seemed to have slowed down a bit after we instituted the pay increase. Over the past several months, we have seen a number of officers opt to retire and to leave the force. But it has been the trend in the past. We've even seen some of these officers come back or seek to come back to APD. And so it's our hope that those numbers will level off. My understanding is they have begun to taper off quite a bit. And we will continue to do all that we can do to make sure that we're working with our public safety personnel to let them know that they're valued, but also with our communities to let our communities know that we value them as well. And what our expectation is that we have a good working relationship, a partnership with our police officers, very much as envisioned in the Obama-Biden administration 21st Century Policing Plan, where our officers are seen as guardians and not warriors within our communities. And I'm scrolling through. I want to make sure that I've hit on the major topic areas before I turn it over to Chief Bryant to give you more details. He'll talk in more details about where we are in terms of our auto thefts, where we are in terms of guns being stolen on the streets. I've touched on street racing. Also, I am issuing an administrative order today related to our camera coordination system and an assessment of where we are with cameras throughout the city. But let me again just remind everyone that a public safety issue is a safety issue for us all. Not only am I mayor, but I also have a family that I'm raising in this city. And so the same concerns that the public has, I have both personally and as mayor. So this is something that we take very seriously, that we are going to continue to focus on. I view this as a two-pronged attack. There are these systemic issues that we've talked about. We talk about them nationally, we talk about them locally, these issues of equity and opportunity and these things that lead people to commit crimes. But there's also this immediate response that we also have to assess and make sure that we're doing everything that we can do proactively to address these crime challenges that we have in the city. Many of you all have heard me speak before in my time as a judge and what I saw coming into our court system, who I saw coming into our court system, what the educational levels were, and what I saw as the opportunities for us to address many of these systemic issues. We're continuing to do that. We'll continue to do that. We convened the advisory commission as it relates to the water boys. I do want to clarify before I toss it over to Chief Bryant, there's never been some blanket direction from our administration not to address the issue with the water boys. Our position has been that if they are committing crimes, if they are uh, harassing people, if they are in the roadway, blocking traffic, etc., that those that should be addressed immediately. But most importantly, having a plan, a long-term plan for many of the young men that we are seeing out on our corners selling water. And I think that I have hit everything. I think there was one other area, but I'm going to stop talking right now, toss it over to Chief Brian for additional details, and then I'll jump back in. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Mayor, and Chief Slaughter and Chief Mitchell, and other supporting team members. As we embark upon this conversation of public safety in the city of Atlanta, as the mayor stated, public safety is all of our concern, but policing is the responsibility of the Atlanta Police Department. And for the issues that we are addressing, the top three things that are of concern to us is the violent crime that we're seeing in our city, police morale, and street racing. Those are the three top issues that I'll speak on this morning. As we're seeing the violence, as the mayor stated, we're seeing violence not just in the city of Atlanta, but in many of our major cities creep up on us uniquely. In the month of July, we saw the highest number of homicides in our city, which was 23. That put us on a trajectory of seeing an increase in violent crimes for the remainder of the year. As we continue to combat these challenges we see around homicides, we have one of the best homicides investigating teams in this country. And so we generally close many of these cases quite quickly and rapidly, and our fugitive team members tend to get these individuals off of the street. So we're doing a phenomenal job, a really good job of being able to address those incidences. The problem is we have so many guns, people find themselves in these levels of disputes where they're unable to resolve conflict easily. And so these are some of the challenges we continue to have, as well as seeing people gather in these social spaces that are untypical because of COVID closing down so many other avenues of social gathering. Individuals can no longer go to football games or basketball games or baseball games or whatever, go out to dinner like they used to. So we find them gathering up generally in locations that are open that will allow such gatherings. But our duty is to go and monitor those and assist as we can to make sure that we keep the level of activity down as much as we possibly can. To make sure that we are also putting as many resources together as it relates to violent crime, I've established re-established partnerships at both our federal and state levels, rejoining in some of these task forces at an analytical level so that we are able to bring to bear more resources to address certain issues that we see throughout our city. But we also recognize that crime just doesn't stay inside the city of Atlanta, that many of these perpetrators of crimes go from one jurisdiction to the other. And so we've established communications with our local partners to come up with different ideas on how we can deal with violent crimes that cross both our jurisdictions as well. Additionally, morale, as the mayor stated, is a topic of conversation between she and I on a regular basis. And as early as this morning, I was out having conversation with one of the zones to see exactly what it is, how they felt, and what it is that we could do better to improve on the morale. I can tell you, based on the data points that I observe on a regular basis and having conversation with the men and women that I run into, we're seeing the morale increase over time. And I think that what we will continue to do is make sure that the command staff are working diligently, as well as with the administration, to encourage the men and women of this police department, that we will continue to have their support them in their work and their efforts. As the mayor talked about our recruitment, our attrition, it is without it is clear that we saw some numbers throughout our civil unrest and over the summer where those numbers got higher than we would typically see, but they have tapered off some. And we have seen a number of officers return back to the Atlanta Police Department. But in my conversation, again, with other major police departments on how their attrition rate is looking, it is very similar. So many of the departments, many of the major police departments in major cities are seeing some of the same incidences. But I think the city of Atlanta is moving, coming to a level of resolve a bit quicker. Street racing is another conversation that we continue to have. We strategize every day on different ways to address this level of street racing. The street racing is not just a disturbance to the community, but it's a dangerous act. And so we're bringing to bear all of the resources that we have, to include our partnership with the states as well as our neighboring cities, to come up with different strategies and ideas, as well as improved technologies to have a greater effect, so that we can see that these types of incidents begin to diminish. And then, as the mayor has talked about the water sales on our streets, we've seen those numbers taper off as well. And we attribute that not just to our efforts here at the police department, but our plea to the community to not support the individuals on the corner, because it causes greater harm than good. And as well as the community coming to an understanding that that was the most effective way of addressing that, we've started to see those numbers, and as well as those types of complaints begin to come down. So I think that we are really moving in the right direction as it relates to how we are addressing public safety in the city of Atlanta. Additionally, one of the things that you will see, not just from the chief level, but at all the different, all 6 zones, are advisory committees, which will be built up of police as well as community leaders, to come up with better ideas, strategies, and solutions to address crime and issues that you may find unique to your area or your neighborhood. We think that this planning, this strategy will be effective, and you will start seeing this immediately as I should have my first meeting next month, and the zone commanders will likewise start having their committees, and we can really work together as we work as one unit, one Atlanta, one APD, to solve the problems of this city.
Thank you very much, Chief Bryant. And with that, I'm going to toss it back to our communications team for further direction.
Right. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and be sure to state your full name and affiliation at the beginning. Maggie, go ahead.
Hi, it's Maggie Lee at Supporter Report. Mayor Bottoms, you said earlier when you were talking about street racing that y'all are working with the municipal court to make sure that people are not automatically released, if I'm understanding that correctly. Can you talk more about what's happening there? And does this involve setting bail? Because I know cash bail is something city council and your administration has moved away from somewhat in the past. Thank you.
And thank you for the question, Maggie. I'm flipping back through my notes. I want to make sure that I get this correct. So municipal court, as you know, due to COVID-19, is just beginning to reopen. But since they reopened this week, Judge Portis has signed an order. That's the chief judge that requires offenders who are charged with street racing violations to be detained and appear in court for certain activity, meaning that they will have to go before a judge. When we eliminated cash bail bond, that was strictly related to our nonviolent city offenses. Obviously, street racing was not something that was as prevalent at that time. So this has been an opportunity for us to assess, or for the courts to assess, this particular crime, this particular area of violations. And with Judge Portis's order, then those charged will have to appear before a judge, and a determination will be made as to what bond will be set. And I don't know if there's anyone else on the line. If I've missed anything, I want to make sure that I've answered that correctly. So if there's further clarification needed on that, I just ask for someone from our team to jump in and make sure that we clarify that. So since no one's jumped in, I'm assuming I've given the correct information on that, Maggie.
Thank you.
Valencia, go ahead.
Unmuted. I'm unmuted now, and the video is started. Valencia Jones with CW69 in Atlanta. I just wanted to ask, what is your response to these attorneys that that met in front of City Hall on Monday, who represent these families of alleged police brutality, who say that the city has basically dropped the ball in terms of compensating families for what they say is some wrongs that were committed by police officers?
So Valencia, I have been a licensed attorney for over 26 years now, I think it is for me. So I understand that attorneys have to take positions. I disagree with what they've said. There's a process that we have to go through. And this administration and me personally, I took very swift actions as it relates to what I could do when these issues arose, particularly as it relates to the college students and to Mr. Brooks. So, I understand that the attorneys have to take a position. We work very closely on many of our progressive recommendations with some of these attorneys. It doesn't mean that we will agree on everything. But the thing that I can tell you I do take exception to is this notion that I somehow don't personally care. That is wrong, period. But my personal position and my personal concerns certainly have to work parallel to what the legal process is with this. We've had some mediation discussions, settlement discussions. These things take time. And unfortunately, it's not as simple as writing a check on first ask for a settlement offer. I can't remove the ability or ask our law department not to do their due diligence in terms of how they work with these attorneys to resolve these issues. So, this is obviously very personal to the victims and to the families. And I want to be respectful of that. But I don't ever want there to be any misunderstanding as to my personal feelings and my personal empathy and compassion for what these families have been through.
And some of these families say that it's been, 3-4 years or longer with no action at all on behalf, from the city in regard to these cases. And in terms of the settlements, these attorneys say that the taxpayers are the ones footing the bill, because they're saying that the police officers don't have this, the city is not paying for this private insurance for these officers.
Well, the city has never had private insurance. We've always been self-insured. So that's an administrative discussion that really is neither here nor there as it relates to these settlements. Even if we did have some type of outside insurance policy, I'm not sure that it would change the course of these settlement discussions. We're going to continue to work with these attorneys, continue to have these discussions. But this attempt to paint the city as being derelict or not moving fast enough, these are experienced attorneys. These attorneys know that settlements and litigation takes time. At the point that you file a lawsuit or the point that you begin to mediate, it's not an overnight process. It takes time. And so that doesn't have anything to do with how the city is insured. The city has been self-insured probably for at least over a decade, if not longer. We will continue to evaluate what the best administrative posture is as it relates to our insurance coverage. But there are defenses, there are responses, et cetera, et cetera. It's a legal process, but I don't want it to be lost on the public that as it relates to my personal response to what happened, particularly with the college students and with the Brooks, I took very swift action. And obviously, there are people who aren't going to be satisfied in every single corner, but we're going to continue to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and continue to be mindful that resolution is something that we're all trying to reach as it relates to a monetary settlement.
Okay, and lastly, these same attorneys are saying that there's a lack of transparency on part of the city by failing to provide records and documentation that they've asked for these cases. And what's your response on their accusation that the city won't provide the documentation and records that they're asking for?
Well, again, I don't know the specifics on which documents that they are asking for, but I can tell you if you compare where we are as a city and how we have responded in releasing information, there have been cases across the country where it's taken months and even still people are waiting for information to be released. So as far as I know, we've released the body cam footage within 24 to 48 hours. We released, as far as I know, and again, without knowing specifics, but the city has been transparent and will continue to be transparent. And I know some of these attorneys personally. I think that for us to have a public spat about many of these areas, they know me well enough to know that's not going to be the most productive way for us to resolve this. This is something we probably need to continue to work with and talk with as we have any number of areas that we face.
Stephen, you're up. Stephen, go ahead.
Mayor, can you hear me?
I can now. Good morning.
I apologize. I'm having Zoom problems. Given what we saw in 2016, how confident are you in a Democratic in a Biden victory in this race?
I'm confident, but I'm not taking anything for granted, and it's going to be a matter of people turning out to vote, plain and simple. We know that we're seeing a record number of people turning out, both Democrats and Republicans, but it is, this is going to be a turnout. This is going to be about turnout and people not taking those things for granted that were taken for granted in 2016.
And if I could ask one unrelated question, what's the administration's position on the competing short-term rental legislation that's out there right now?
Our position is I want to see what City Council puts forth and allow City Council to go through their deliberations, and we will evaluate what City Council puts forth. So until I have something before me, the administration has not taken a firm position. I know that there are concerns about party houses, et cetera, throughout the city. Certainly, people want to balance that with their opportunity to be able to manage and to maximize use of their properties. So we'll see what City Council comes up with on that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Roxanne, go ahead.
Sorry, helps to unmute. Hi, Mayor. I wanted to know, what are the city's preparations for in the case of possible post-election demonstrations?
And I'll let Chief Bryan talk in more detail about that. But based on my conversations with Chief Bryan, we don't have any specific intelligence other than the fact that the entire nation is going to be on standby. We've been working and coordinating with our federal partners as well as our local and state partners to make sure that we are prepared to respond to what may happen. But as with the rest of the country, we are hoping that this will be a peaceful election and transition. Anything otherwise really would be like something we've not seen in our country in my lifetime anyway. But we are certain we will be prepared in the same way that we are for any big event or anticipation of any unrest. But I'll let Chief Bryan give more details on that.
Thank you, Mayor. And absolutely, you're absolutely correct. Right now, there's no verified threats against any of our polling locations or to the election, based on the intelligence that we've received federally and from our state partners or internally. What we will have is all of our operation centers operating either the day of prior to the election or the day of the election and continuously throughout the week. Fulton County Police Department is taking the lead on securing the the polling locations. The City of Atlanta Police Department will work in support to make sure that these locations are safe and not bothered by any outside agitators.
Thank you.
Josh, you're up.
While we're waiting for the next person to jump in, just one thing off topic, Operation Clean Sweep, I want to remind everyone that's still going very well. We have cleared nearly 300 illegal dump sites, amounting to 290 tons of debris and rubbish. And also we've mowed more than 37 miles in the city's right of way. We've also removed more than 1,100 illegal signs and collected more than 1,000 discarded tires. This is a push for us to clean up our communities. And it is parallel to this crime conversation, because we know quite often when our communities are in disrepair, there's the whole theory of the broken window theory, and seeing uptick in crime in our communities. So not only is it for aesthetic purposes, but also just part of our overall strategy to make sure that we are tackling crime at every single angle possible. All right, go ahead with your question.
Good morning, Mayor. This is Josh Wade with WSB TV. And I think I have a question from my colleague, Richard Belcher, whose question went in under my name, but I have a separate question as well. But he's wondering about the Buckhead Blue proposal and whether or not that shows a lack of confidence in your administration.
He'll have to talk to the folk who are trying to coordinate that, but based on my meeting this morning with representatives from the Buckhead Coalition along with Chief Bryan, my understanding it's about partnership, not a lack of confidence, but really, again, just layering it on. And what I shared with the Buckhead Coalition this morning is we want to be true partners. Chief Bryan reiterated that we don't ever take away resources, but to the extent that we can add on resources with other community partners or private partners is something that we're always open to, and we'll certainly continue to work together to make sure that we're maximizing whatever we can do to improve public safety in our communities.
And then if I could follow up with a separate question regarding supervised injection facilities, totally different topic. But Philadelphia has began implementation of a supervised injection facility where heroin addicts can use their drugs in a medically supervised facility. A brand new study conducted by the Institute for Clinical and Economic Review has evaluated these programs in 6 cities. One of the cities was Atlanta, the city of Atlanta. They determined that one of these facilities can save the city $3.6 million a year in fewer ER visits, ambulance rides, and hospitalizations. What is your position on supervised injection facilities? Is that something you have considered to reduce Atlanta's overdose deaths and financial costs?
This is not something that has been put before me for consideration. As with all things related to public health, this is something I want more information about, and from the health professionals and those who specialize in understanding the implications of these type programs. But it's not been put formally before us for consideration, but at the point that it is, we'll take advantage of having Emory University right in our backyard, Morehouse School of Medicine, along with all of our other partners that we work with as it relates to providing social services with people who are struggling with addiction, and also with the leadership of our Chief Health Officer, Dr. Angelica Jeter.
And then, and I assume you'll be watching how Philadelphia's works out, perhaps, to see how their success, if they have success.
And I know they're, it sounds very similar to what's happening in San Francisco as well. But again, this has not been put before us for a formal response or consideration. But thankfully, we'll have the benefit of being able to look at other cities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brittany, go ahead.
Good morning, Brittany Edney, CBS 46. Just wanted to see, what have you thought about Councilmember Antonio Brown meeting with street racing groups, also, working with developers to try to find space on a private land for people to go to? What's kind of your reaction and thought process on that?
Council members do what council members do. So if that's something that he is doing, then we'll see how that turns out. I know that our administration has also discussed or initially talked about whether or not it would be appropriate to have something set aside, a specific place in the city. It's a bit more challenging than that. There are liability implications, et cetera. But I was a council member for 8 years. It didn't hurt to have conversations. It doesn't hurt to meet. The question is what's feasible and what can you actually get done?
And it looks like our final question is from JD with the AJC.
My video. Hi, Mayor. JD Capilouto with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. My question is also about Buckhead. As it pertains to Buckhead specifically, a lot of residents there have spoken up, obviously, about crime. Some said they feel like specifically they're not being listened to by the city and the administration. How would you respond to that? And do you think that issues there as it pertains to crime are actually worse than in the rest of the city or in other places?
We've seen an uptick across the city. I think there have been more high-profile conversations in Buckhead. But this notion that the administration is not listening is simply not true. I'm in contact with Chief Bryan on a daily basis, quite often multiple times a day, discussing crime in our city. It is something that we are closely monitoring. It is something that we are very aggressively tackling in our city. We recognize this is a problem, not just in Buckhead, but in East Atlanta. It's the reason I met with the Edgewood community. It's in Southwest Atlanta, where I live. It's all over the city, and it's a problem for the entire city as a whole. I think the difference, obviously, with Buckhead, there's often just a more public, elevated conversation just by nature of the community. But I'm listening. It has my full attention, has always had my full attention. And again, recognizing that it doesn't make it any better, but this is an uptick that we're seeing across the country. This is a national trend. Doesn't make you feel better when you are the victim of a crime. It doesn't make you feel any better when it's happening in your community. but we've got crime going up, violent crime in the city, and we're very well aware of where it's happening, the nature of the crimes, and we are being very specific in how we address that. And so, it's no secret that my that going into the mayor's office, there were some real divisions as it relates to certain communities. But this is one Atlanta. That's been the theme of our administration. And so we don't focus on one community at the expense of the other, but we also recognize that how we respond has to be a more tailored community approach. It's not going to be a one size fits all. And fortunately, in Buckhead, we have some community partners who are very much willing to make the tangible investments in helping us to do better at what we do. So we're going to continue to work with them, but we're going to work with every community across this city that needs our attention. We'll continue to do that.
Thank you. And you discussed earlier about Judge Portis's order that would take away some of the initial immediate bond for people who are arrested on street racing charges. To clarify, would you support Councilman Michael Julian Bond's ordinance that would make that change permanent? Some critics say that it would roll back some of your cash bail initiatives.
I think that this is a fluid assessment. This is a space we've never been in before. We've never been in the middle of a pandemic. We've not been without traffic in Atlanta in decades, probably. And so I think at this point in time, Chief Portis's approach and his order gets us to where we need to be. And we will continue to evaluate what more we need to do. But we're going to continue to be aggressive. We're responding to this very quickly. I think that any solutions just will need to be evaluated based on how the steps that we're taking are working. Any permanent solutions will need to be evaluated based on the backdrop of how these immediate solutions are working.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
That was our final question.
That's it? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us. And again, as always, I ask for that you continue to share with our communications team and our administration your feedback on the format of these briefings, and if there are additional ways that we can improve it. But again, encouraging our residents for emergencies, please call 911. Don't assume that we are alerted, that we know what's happening. It's the quickest way that you can get a response from the city. If for some reason you are placed on hold because it's a high volume call time, reminding people don't hang up. It only puts you in the back of the line. Please hang on to the line so that we can respond and dispatch officers accordingly. For non-emergency situations, if there's a need for cleanup or non-emergency response, our 311 system is also available to our residents and our businesses as well. Thank you for joining us today.